everyone, welcome back to Amara Talks. Today's video is about mental illness. I'm going to talk statistics about myself and where you can find information and support. So because of the concept of cultural relativity, I'm only talking about the West. In the UK, approximately 1 in 6 adults experience common mental health problems like anxiety and depression, and overall 1 in 4 experience mental illness. In January 2024 alone, 442 people died by suspected suicide, and over 4,000 in total in 2024. In America, roughly 57.8 million people experience a diagnosable mental illness each year, and 14.1 million experience serious mental illnesses. And the suicide rate of 14 per 100,000 in 2021 out of a population of 331.9 million people. Most mental illnesses develop during the late teens and early 20s, but they can hit at any time in your life. They're not excuses and they're not weakness, although these are misconceptions I've encountered a number of times. The most obvious place to go for support outside of your family and friends is NHS talking therapies. There are a few different kinds depending on the individual needs, and you can get a referral through your GP. Once you've engaged with the mental health services, they can refer you to a list of organisations where you can socialise with other mentally ill people and the staff. I think to re-engage you in activities that distract you from what you've been through and the symptoms you haven't got control over, or like coping mechanisms to deal with, and help you regain your independence. So you can be accepted by employers and your friends and communities. Schools also offer pastoral care, and in some they have specialised mental health support for students. Headspace is an app that offers multiple guided meditations, and I think meditation music, you can find meditation music on most platforms though. Probably a controversial opinion. I think assisted suicide should be available to anyone who spends every waking moment miserable with no sense of hope and see nothing in their future worth fighting their symptoms for, as in their motivation is completely gone. Kind of seems inhumane to force anyone to stay alive when they sincerely want to die. I've listed charities that offer support and information in the description. All these services and the people they employ usually have good intentions at heart and support countless people in getting out of maladaptive states. Some are there for research but are obligated to ask permission, and you have the right to withdraw from the study at any point throughout. Unfortunately, as to be expected with any industry, there are some that shout for the paycheck and have no passion or commitment to their job description, and they're going through the motions, checking off a list of duties, waiting for payday. We all have bills to pay at the end of the day. The waiting list for NHS talking therapies can be between weeks and months. We have to go in with some level of self-awareness and commitment to directly addressing what you're aware is unhealthy about your mentality and or behaviour, unless you're looking for validation, which I think is all some people need to function. Personally, I've tried a few different therapies, learned several coping mechanisms which have improved my state, but I'm still dependent on unhealthy coping mechanisms when I'm really struggling. I think the pressure to conform to the standards of people who don't struggle functioning well enough to hold down a job and maintain a facade when life tests them probably encourages them to turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Years worth of studying and objective hindsight, I can say with complete confidence that the breakdown I had in 2017 that involved me spamming Facebook for 3 months straight and has been followed by 8 years of being scapegoated, was the result of narcissistic abuse. The narcissistic abuse syndrome symptoms faded away around the beginning of 2024, despite the relentless attempts at extending it indefinitely so that they can live in denial and project their narcissism onto me. The win I needed, but a win. I have social anxiety, which was worse when symptoms first developed. I only have panic attacks when I'm having a disagreement with irrational, illogical, unreasonable people, whereas it was unpredictable but applied to any social situation where the expectations of me weren't crystal clear. I had CBT for those symptoms and followed that with throwing myself as far out of my comfort zone as I could handle without burning out or breaking down. I worked in hospitality. The first time I suspected the lose in between impulsive, reckless behaviour was bipolar was when I was 17. I can say it with certainty now. I have emotionally unstable personality disorder, but I think it's more likely to be complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So trauma responses to vague triggers from an accumulation of abuse, mostly psychological, gaslighting, victim blaming, compulsive or pathological lying, stereotypically antisocial personality disorder behaviour. Could be both. When I started noticing the symptoms that are reflective of narcissistic behaviour, I walked away from the situation that I was in with no intention of ever looking back. Recovery and self-love became my priority. A lot of my experiences growing up and as an adult have kind of been reinforcement that my life isn't worth anything unless I'm being useful to anyone except myself, which is basically the indoctrination that got in the way of me accomplishing anything that's worth anything to anyone, including myself to an extent, who isn't hiring entry-level employees who can be trained on the job. I've lost jobs over sleeping and showing up late, despite holding myself to a standard of professionalism regardless of the job title. A few people have given me grief that's crossed the line. Their attachment isn't welcome anymore, and I've distanced myself as much as possible. Emotionally, I wrote a few songs in a euphorically manic state, meant to be empowering, and the response was, who do you think you're empowering? Definitely not yourself vibes, do you know what I mean? So I'm leaving those people to indulge in their inferiority, superiority, god complexes without me. I'd say that's a fairly healthy coping mechanism, defense mechanism. It kind of felt like I got smacked over the head with a baseball bat, and I stayed conscious but fell to the ground, and then got my head kicked in by about 10 different people, while I begged them to stop, and they're screaming, laughing about it. As a metaphor, obviously. I also very obviously have ADHD, which I dealt with by putting up walls and expecting to be held responsible, right or wrong, for any conflict I had at a very young age. It didn't make me bitter. It made me good at avoiding conflict. As a teen and adult, self-acceptance helped. I'm weird, I'm awkward. It's not worth me keeping up with the popularity contests, never mind competing. And I'm a highly organised control freak. I have OCD in that anyone else touches or uses feels dirty to me. In the wrong house with the wrong people, I don't see the point in trying to maintain any level of cleanliness outside of personal hygiene. It tends to like cap my mood the vast majority of the time. It's like the microorganisms at insect size without the compulsive cleaning, and everything has a place that it should be and put back immediately when you're finished with it, and you should take every opportunity to maximize efficiency. I respect my time, I respect your time, obsessively, compulsively, with great difficulty in my circumstances so far. I can't focus, never mind function, when I'm not based and organised. I recovered from an eating disorder, faking it until I make it. I did therapy for it. I didn't finish therapy. I still haven't faced eating disorder psychology, but I'm so far out of my comfort zone. I feel like living in a sensory deprivation chamber. I've never been so depressed in my life, and I keep hitting rock bottom emotionally. I more or less completely refrained the suicidal thoughts, but I still feel the feeling. I think I'd probably get a gun at the point I think people should be allowed to commit suicide and shoot myself in the head in the spot it's handed to me, so I'm not forced to stay alive in prison. I think there are people who would rather see someone kill themselves than give them a chance in life. Probably the type who have much more than anyone who would attempt it, to keep them going. And probably the type that would call it cowardice and weakness, which is obviously ignorance, considering I'd literally be dead right now if I hadn't chickened out of a suicide attempt by overdose. It's slow and painful. It shuts down your liver, and then you die of poisoning yourself over a few weeks from the toxins your liver isn't filtering out of your system when you eat and drink, accumulating in your system, causing your organs to shut down. That being said, I think some people took me talking about throwing myself out of my comfort zone as an invitation to jump on the bandwagon and shove me around a bit outside the lines, partially from a good place, partially due to those attachments that come with the expectation of you to represent them and their morals and their customs and their values. That being said, I've never been comfortable leaning on people, and I doubt anyone who's leaned on me will be comfortable being leaned on, by me at least. That's dynamic, do you know what I mean? Especially the people that call that symptom manipulation or attention seeking, while metaphorically kicking you with do it repetitively. Like I'm fighting to build a future for myself, and they're basically coming, how dare you not have committed to the dole and given up on living as a productive sociable member of society and settled for withering away in isolation for the rest of your life, for not living to serve anyone and everyone except yourself like you deserve, slave. You know that type that end up in prison or death because they take too many risks with too many people too many times, and there's no reasoning with them. Like, they violate you for telling them they're violating you, and then violate you for asking them to stop violating you, and violate you for protecting yourself from being violated, and violate you for telling anyone they're violating you. Like, falling apart and trying to put myself back together and my life back together seems to have been interpreted as some sort of betrayal by some people. Their attachments aren't welcome either. The fight against me showing myself love and compassion and treating myself like anything other than an inanimate object has destroyed a lot of relationships I valued, along with the rose-tinted glasses I wore and the pedestals that they were on, because of this perspective those people have given. It's the corrupt abuse of power that got them off the pedestals they were on, but the respect was never mutual, and that perspective was definitely something I needed. I remember my gran, who worked on a psychiatric board, saying mental illness doesn't exist, and I think on some level I agree that mental illness is people being rejected by their families and or communities and being expected to repress their individuality and potentially don't love and respect themselves, maybe because they haven't been shown the compassion that they need, enough to distance themselves from the people who don't accept them for whatever reason. I have a list of stuff I'm planning on talking about, and I haven't decided what's next, so make sure to subscribe and like and comment, turn on notifications, to get updates when I post. I'm thinking I could probably manage a video once a fortnight, so I'm going to aim to post twice a month. I started working on a single, but it's turned into a project, maybe a mixtape. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on posting covers on TikTok. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. Bye.